Dr. Jennifer Gaudiani. Thank you for joining me again for a reading from my book, Sick Enough. This reading is going to be from the end of chapter 5, and the box is called The Parables of the Fortress and the Nuclear Wasteland, and the Perfectionist and the Appreciative Achiever. Now, I'd like to say, for starters, that I'm in my classic work outfit now, which is a nice top, a little bit of jewelry, and my sweatpants and my slippers. So that's really dressed up for me now. I wonder if you may have similarly been dressing up in the past week or so. I would just invite you to get cozy, sit back, relax, grab a snack or a meal to begin with this, if that feels supportive to you. And remember to focus on the things that fill and recharge you during this time. For me, those things include reading books that, despite my Harvard English degree, which might make you think that I would read literature, generally means reading young adult fantasy fiction with dragons, magic, werewolves, shadow fighters, the whole nine yards. I also love to cuddle with my family, go on walks, eat good snacks. These are the things that fill me. Make sure you're honoring the things that fill you. Okay, on to the box. There are two parables I have shared with countless patients over the years. When hope feels dim, the recovery process feels too hard, or when the eating disorder voice is so loud and mean that patients wonder if they have the strength to keep fighting, I often turn to one or both of these stories. I often tell the first story when my patient sits in a crisis of anxiety about the idea of full weight restoration, or when the idea of recovery seems overwhelming. In this story, the castle represents recovery and the wasteland represents the eating disorder. I'm standing on the wall of a castle, the parapet in front of me. I'm looking out over a nuclear wasteland, dusty, dark, and grim. Behind me, within the castle walls, lies a beautiful garden. The trees are richly green and heavy with fruit. Fragrant and colorful flowers grow abundantly. The light is golden and pathways wind through the garden. My patient is scrabbling around on the ground in the nuclear wasteland. I stand on the castle wall and call to her, come in to this castle and walk with me in the garden. She says desperately, I'm scared. I keep talking, inviting her to keep getting closer to the castle. I say, come stand next to me. See what the castle is like compared to your wasteland. Feel the sunlight on your face in the garden, and then you can make a decision about where you want to be. Many of my patients crawl all the way up to the castle gates, only to cower back into the dust, saying they're just too frightened to come through. I remind them that life isn't perfect within the castle walls, but it's a lot better than out in the wasteland. The next parable is my version of a story a dear friend of mine tells, and he heard the original from one of his Harvard professors, Tal Ben-Shahar, who went on to write books about bringing happiness to life. I tell this story when my patients feel resistant to the idea of resting, recharging, or going a little easier on themselves. They worry that if they're kinder to themselves, they won't achieve as much or live up to their own expectations. Two hikers, the perfectionist and the appreciative achiever, set off to climb a mountain. The perfectionist arrives at the summit and is full of dissatisfaction. He says, I didn't climb the mountain fast enough, I didn't train hard enough, I didn't take the optimal route, and my equipment didn't work as well as it should have. The appreciative achiever arrives at the very same summit, takes a deep breath and looks around in wonder. He says, what a beautiful view. What a joy to have used my strength to accomplish this. How lucky I am to be standing at the top of this mountain. Both hikers summited. They both achieved the very same accomplishment, but the perfectionist couldn't celebrate and had only criticism for himself and the experience, while the appreciative achiever was able to live in the moment and reflect joyfully on what he had done. Our souls will bend and ultimately break under constant self-criticism. Constant self-judgment is a toxic environment to live in. we have to remember to celebrate all our victories, large and small. This doesn't mean we become complacent or stop working to improve. It means that our souls need to receive acknowledgement when we've done something we've worked hard for. That accomplishment doesn't have to be big or important. It just needs to be recognized. Otherwise, when we give ourselves the constant message of "you're inadequate and disappointing," we will despair and run out of energy. Physical illness, chronic pain, or exacerbation of mental illness will stop us in our tracks and force us to disengage from life because the soul can't thrive under such circumstances. Be an appreciative achiever, not a perfectionist. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.